Hey Al, DT Neal here, talking to you about writerly stuff, storytelling, all those sorts of things. Um, I've talked about this before, but I'm going to talk about it again, just because I keep being reminded of it. Um, I think, and I'm basing this just on just things that I observe, and even in my immediate life. While there are absolutely diehard readers out there, people who will read a lot and do read a lot, the lion's share of people don't read very often, if at all. And we're at this point in this world where the supply of books vastly outnumbers the supply of readers, which is why it's so damned hard to sell any books and get people to read. Because the people who do read, the small percentage of people who do read, have an abundance of choices. And it's incredibly hard to break into that because they have an embarrassment of riches. They got tons of stuff to read. And there's a lot of junk out there too. And no one ever fesses up to it, really. I imagine when they do surveys, people I think they overestimate or over indicate their own reading habits, and they'll be like, "Yeah, I read a dozen books a year," and I'm thinking, "Do you really?" And I know there are a few, like again, the super readers who read 52 books a year or 300 books a year or whatever they're claiming, and that's fine. There are probably some people who do, but most people, there are just so many other things they can do instead of reading, and that's a little terrifying. I saw an article, I think it was last week or the week before, I can't remember, about the decline of reading, and that people are finding themselves less and less able to read more than a sentence or two of something. Like the deep read that goes with a book is getting increasingly out of reach for a lot of people. That's terrifying, not just from me, from the perspective of being someone who writes, but just thinking of like the social consequences of that. Like what happens in a society in 5 or 10, 15 years where complex ideas, which writing can still deliver, complex ideas, are just beyond people. That's bad. There's no way of looking at it and saying, oh, that's a good thing. It's bad. And I've even encountered it sometimes where I can tell where a reader, based on a review, where they got lost. Now, one could throw it back at me and say, oh, you lost the reader. But I do pay attention to that when I write. Like when I construct sections, when I write through and revise and rewrite, I'm mindful of people's comprehension, the narrative flow. I pay attention to those things in hopes of being as readable as possible for people. But I do see, and this is relatively recent phenomenon, which is why it worries me, because I'm thinking if this magnifies and expands, then we're really going to be in a difficult place where people are only speaking to each other in emojis or whatever, or maybe grunting and shaking fists at each other. I don't know. But if that ability to process complex language, and the thing is this is what's so frustrating about it. I guess this is a rant. The means of discovering information is still readily available. So, for example, if you're reading a book, if you're one of those few people who actually is reading a book, and you see a word you don't know, now you can do two things. You can infer based on the context of the prose what that word kind of means, or you can just go online, look it up, and see a definition of the word from a trusted source. Not that hard. And I feel like, but I have this feeling that level of commitment is like too much. It's too much work to go click, 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 and look up the word. and people aren't doing it, so they just kind of blow it off or they breeze through. That's disturbing to me. It's kind of like how you can see something where a lot of people are viewing some content, but they don't hit the like button because it's just so much work to commit and go. It's just so hard. Oh, so difficult. They don't do it. They'll look at it, maybe scan it, jump, bounce, whatever, bounce rates, they'll come and go. But they can't like it. They don't want to go on the mat to go It's too much of an ask. And I find that really, like, that's also to me symptomatic of that thing. So, you know, you look at a book and you're like, oh, look at how thick that book is. There's so many words in there. You know, like the science fiction one that'll be coming out in August. You know, it's like 116,000 words. You know, and I was mindful of that, and I've talked about it before, where I'm mindful of not making books too long. This one is a relic of that time when I still wrote big books. And it's like, oh, 116,000 words, and I'm gonna be like, yeah, you think reading that is hard? Try writing that. It's just hard. It's difficult, especially if you're a human and you're actually writing the words instead of those word pimps who don't, just want the AI to write for them. Anyway, life is complicated. Human civilization is complicated. There isn't technology has simplified a lot of things for us in terms of how we function, but we still need to have cognitive complexity. We still need to have to think. We cannot just autopilot our way through our lives if we want to remain free. And maybe the fact that we're facing this crisis of democracy around the world is as a reaction to that. And that's scary stuff, not just for writers, but for everybody. If thinking is too difficult for people, if reading is too difficult for people, I don't know how we're going to crawl out of that hole. That's a nasty thing.